Stephen Andress here for thelines.com. Welcome to a special episode of Behind the Lines, joined by our favorite friend from football season, Christian Cipollini, sports trader over at BetMGM. In this episode, we're going to look back at the craziness that was betting on the NBA draft, and in particular, the market for the number one overall pick. So, Christian, just right off the bat to set the scene, how crazy was this? Have you seen anything like this before in your experience as a trader with what we saw with the number one pick?
I haven't seen anything like this in any market, in anything. This was insane, this draft. Jabari Smith went from minus 500 to plus 150 to minus 10,000, back to minus 500, back to minus 250, all over the place, all within a span of 24 hours. Same with Paulo. He was going back and forth. Never seen anything like it.
Yeah, I mean, you had one guy who opened it like minus, heavy money, got up to like minus 600, and then the other guy winds up being a huge favorite. And then at one point, books were making him like minus 10,000 because they didn't want any more money on Jabari. And then at the end of the day, Woj was wrong, tried to cover his butt 30 minutes before the draft, and all the plus money Paolo bets wound up paying off with the Magic surprising everybody and taking Paolo Banchero. So the first question I have for you is, what is the challenge of trying to book a draft like this? Because I feel like we've talked about this with the NFL draft in recent years, that it is a challenge and there's always this fear that inside information could get out. First of all, do you think there was inside information, and how much was this draft and this number one pick situation basically every fear you've ever had as a bookmaker when it comes to a draft?
Yeah, I mean, there had to have been inside information just based on the line movement and the way we had bets coming in. Woj sat there and he tweeted, "This is going to be the order," and we are still taking Paulo bets at first overall. So, Woj is, we saw he was wrong, but he's wrong not very often. So the fact that he's tweeting that this is probably the order and we're still seeing bets coming on Paulo just tells you right there that someone knew something. And that is a lot of the difficulty of the draft. This isn't something that's settled on the court. There is information out there that you can sit there, and if you knew someone in the Magic front office, a friend of a friend, someone, I'm sure there must have been some leaks somewhere through there because we were seeing a lot of Paulo money. So BetMGM, extremely difficult.
Absolutely. So BetMGM at one point yesterday leading up to the draft made the decision to take the number one pick market down. Obviously, this is not the same situation of a game where there is an unknown outcome potentially, or a futures market. It's a different situation because we're dealing with inside information and speculation. And you guys aren't alone as well. We're talking about other books. I heard stories that books were taking less than $50 for a max bet on the NBA draft. So each book was making their decisions on how best to deal with this unprecedented situation with the number one pick. So take us a little bit behind the scenes on what led you guys to take that market down for a little bit, and how rare it is for you guys to do something like that.
Yeah, this draft, a lot more than others in the past, we had made a conceited effort to be way more defensive than we have. We didn't open up anything past the first overall pick until Thursday afternoon. We had intended to open that up earlier Thursday morning, but with the Woj pick, that changed it. We also, we kept our max limits lower too, because there's so much information out there, and it's so difficult as a bookmaker to try and do that. There's so much information. You don't know which leak is real, what's a rumor, what rumor is real, and all that information it's just so hard to try and get that all in one place. So we had just made the decision just to try to be as defensive as possible. And even into the wee hours of Wednesday morning was when we decided to pull down the market. We had started to take a lot of Paulo money. It was about 1:30 in the morning, 1:32 in the morning Wednesday night. And other books must have been seeing the same action as we saw a lot of their lines start to shift. And we just at that point had made the decision, let's just take this down because there's clearly something we don't know out there. there's clearly some information out there, and we don't have it, and let's just take it down for now. So that's what we did. And the same when Woj tweeted that, we saw that and said, all right, Woj says it, that's it. There's no point of having the market up, but clearly that was wrong.
Again, Christian Cipollini, sports trader at BetMGM, joining us here. Gracious enough to give us a few minutes of his time as he's traveling out on the road here. And Christian, you just said something that piqued my interest, because I still hear a lot of people saying the phrase, Vegas must know, Vegas knows something. Well, when we're dealing with a draft, what you just said indicates that, in fact, Vegas doesn't know something, but the action is telling them something.
Exactly. Yeah. So we'll see someone come through trying to put a big bet on something, and that tells us right there, they must know something, at least something that we don't, especially in the case of Paulo, where he's plus 1,000, plus 550, and someone's trying to get a big bet down on that. That's telling me there must be something up, because you wouldn't want to get that amount of money down on something that's a favorite in these type of markets. So in those cases, yeah, we do go by what the customer is kind of telling us. And we just try to get the information that we can, but it's not always there. And sometimes the public has more information than we do in draft cases.
And that amount of money, or a max bet down in a draft situation, is very different than like some of the tweets we see now on sports betting social media, where they're saying, well, somebody just laid six figures on an NFL game or the side of an NBA game. Those are very different things, right?
Right. Significantly different. This is usually, when you want to place a bet of that size on a draft, it means you have the information already. In a game, anything can happen on the field. Someone can get hurt. So many different things can happen, where, the book is a little bit more protected. In the draft, they might just know.
Absolutely. So for final perspective here, before we wrap up, I mentioned that I heard some other books taking less than $50 max wagers. Give people perspective of a big game, an NBA game, maybe even an NFL game, the day of a game, ballpark of what your max wager will be at BetMGM, and then what your max wager was for the NBA draft, so people understand how big of a difference that is.
Yeah, for a main game, especially a football game, main side, money line, spread, and total, there's really not too big of a limit it is. So, we'll take most action in those cases. Because again, like I said, that it all kind of depends on how the field goes. But for a draft, and especially this, BetMGM, we've decided to be very defensive. So, we wouldn't take much more. We were taking more than $50, but not too much more. I think we had our max win about $500.
There we go. Great perspective, as always, from Christian Cipollini over at BetMGM on the unprecedented situation, what we saw with the NBA draft. Christian, again, I know you're traveling. I know you're doing some work outside of work today. Really appreciate you taking some time to join us and tell us a little bit about such a wild night in sports betting.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.